What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be talking to you about how to use PHP in the command line and how to use the built-in web server. PHP is most often used with a web server like Apache or Nginx, and you output your data or your information to a web browser as we saw in our previous tutorials. But you could also use PHP in the command line, and that's what I want to demonstrate here. By using PHP in the command line, it's great when you're in development mode or when you're developing your web application. You can output information right in the terminal instead of having to go back to the browser. Or you might decide you want to have some scripts running, not really for the browser itself, but maybe for the web server on the command line area. Alright, so let's open up our code editor. Again, I'm going to be using VS Code. Now, one of the good things about VS Code is that it has a good built-in terminal. So you can go to Terminal, New Terminal, and it opens it up down here in the bottom part. Now I'm using Bash as my terminal emulator, and I'm using that because I am on Windows and I want to have a Bash environment. This is for certain things I'm doing in other types of projects, but just wanted to point that out. If you want to use Bash also, you would have to use Git, which is version control. And I have some videos on how to use Git, but I'll probably do another series where I go more in depth. But pretty much I downloaded Git. You go to your settings, and I'll just show you here. Right here for my terminal integrated shell windows, I'm pointing to the bash.exe file. But you could use whatever emulator you want to use that you have with your code editor. Alright, so here we're going to be using PHP via the command line. And you still need to have PHP installed on your system in order for this to work. So that's when downloading a package like XAMPP or MAMP or the individual elements of a LAMP stack would be helpful. But the good thing is you don't actually have to run the XAMPP or MAMP application when you're doing this. Let's go back to the browser real quick. When we're going to be using the built-in PHP web server in your terminal application, we're going to be using PHP with a space, a dash, and a capital S, and then either your host or your IP address, and then the port. So if we go back to our editor, actually before doing that, you're going to want to maybe copy a code snippet like this and then paste it within your editor. And then this is what we're going to be using as well within the terminal right here. PHP space dash capital S space localhost colon 8080. Now the thing to remember is that this is going to bring up our code from the index.php file. If you want to get a different file, it's going to be localhost colon 8080 / and then the name of that file. So let's go back to our editor. We'll actually open up index.php for this example. And then let's type out here within our terminal emulator in the bottom, give us more space. Let's say PHP dash capital S space localhost colon 8080. And let's see what that does. So now we started our local development server. So now let's go to a browser, as it says here, PHP 7.4.8 development server, and then localhost colon 8080. So I'm going to control click, and then you see it brought us right to our index.php file. So that's similar to what we were doing with XAMPP, right? We started our local web server, but instead of XAMPP or MAMP, we did it right within the PHP application and the terminal. So that's how to use the local server. Now, if we wanted to get the test.php, let's go back to our editor. We're going to close that off. I'm going to use the up arrow to get my previous command. Put the / test.php. We see the same thing happened. Now we'll click on, control click on the link over here. Opens it up in the browser. And we see we got the test.php file. So that works. So when would you use the built-in web server for PHP versus something like XAMPP or MAMP? Well, if you're not going to be working with a database in a particular project or a particular part of a project, and you don't want to fire up another application, then you might just want to use the built-in web server. But now let's move on to actually using the command line to output our information right within the terminal. Let's see how that works. I'm going to X out of these. I'm going to go back to our code editor. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification icon so that way whenever I create a new video, you'll be notified. Alright, let's go back to the editor. I'm going to Control C out of here. The built-in web server is definitely a handy tool, like I mentioned, if you don't want to use another application for very simple projects. But you can actually simplify your development process further by using PHP on the command line and outputting the results in the terminal instead of the browser. So there's pretty much 4 ways to get this done. All right, so down here in the terminal, we're going to say echo, single quotation mark. We're going to open up our PHP tags in the terminal right here, echo, double quotation marks, hello world. Make sure that's closed off. Got to put in our semicolon, closing PHP tag right there. And then our closing single quotation mark, space, and then we're going to pipe it. That's the vertical pipe. It's normally on the right hand side of your keyboard. And then space, PHP. So let's see what happens here when we press enter or return. Right there, it outputted hello world right within our terminal. So that's one way to do it. We just use the echo construct, use our single quotation marks. We opened up a pair of PHP tags. Inside of it, we used echo. Then we used double quotation marks, hello world. And then we closed off the statement with the semicolon, closed off our PHP tags, closed off the single quotation mark. And then we piped it into PHP and it worked. Now, what if you want to use a file name? Let's try that out. We're going to say PHP index.php. Let's see what happens there. Here, you see what happened is it literally outputted the doc type, the HTML tag, body tag, the H1, and then PHP powers almost 80% of the modern web. Then our closing body tag and closing HTML tag. Now it didn't output the PHP tags and it didn't output the echo itself. It just outputted the statement or the string. So that worked. Now we could do the same thing. Let's use our up arrow. I'm going to put test. And you see here, it outputted it hello world. And then it put in the BR tags in that manner. Now let's go back to our test.php file. And I want to show you something that I briefly mentioned in a previous video on the basic language syntax. Now let's see what happens. Let me fix this up here. If instead, I'm going to put in /n and let's see what happens. So you already see there's a difference in color here. So I'm trying to get a new line to have it go onto a new line, similar to what we did with the browser, where we had it break to a new line with the BR tag. But now I'm using the new line character because we saw here the BR tag did not work within the terminal. And you're going to see the /n used in some tutorials as well. But now I want to see what happens with the new line tag here, the new line character inside of the single quotation marks and the double quotation marks. Does it work as we anticipate? What's the difference? Let's run that again in our terminal. And you see the first one, it didn't go into a new line. Second one didn't go into a new line. It printed it out here, but here it did. Now let me try to make this a little bit more clear. I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to save that. Let's run that again. Now you see the first one, it brought us to a new line. The new line character is not outputted, but it's processed by the interpreter because it's inside double quotation marks. And this is going to be the same for the tab character and a bunch of other special characters within your character set. But when it's inside single quotation marks, the new line character is actually printed out and is not processed. So it's not going to a new line for those. Now the next thing we could do is we could use our code as the argument with the R flag. So how does that work? Well, let's say PHP -R. We'll use single quotation marks, echo. We'll say hello again. Close off that statement, and then the final quotation mark. So this is different than what we did before. This time we're actually using PHP first, then we're using the R flag, and then we're using our echo statement there. Let's press enter. Then it says hello again in the terminal itself. Or another way you could use the command line. So we can say PHP and then -A. This is going to create an interactive mode. So let's press enter. Now you see we have the interactive shell, and we have the PHP with the greater than sign. So now we're inside of an interactive shell itself. So instead of having to use that first set of single quotation marks, we could just say echo hello one more time. Close that off. Close off our semicolon. Now let's press enter, see what happens. Hello one more time, and we're still inside the interactive shell. Now this was just my way of introducing you to how to use PHP via the command line. It's very helpful to do this, especially for tutorials. We're not going to always have to fire up our XAMPP program or MAMP or whatever program you're using. You could just use the built-in web server in PHP itself, and you can actually output your code right there within the command line. So that's what we're going to be doing for the most part in most of these tutorials. We're going to be using it in this manner. So I figured let me introduce you to how to do this now, so that way you can follow along as we progress in these tutorials. Control C to exit that, and I'm going to type out PHP-H. And this is going to give you all the different flags that you could use. It's good to take a look at this, play around with it, get familiar, and see what your various options are. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to introduce you to how to use PHP via the command line and how to use the built-in web server for PHP. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Click that subscribe button right there and the notification bell, so that way whenever I create new videos, you'll be notified. And you could always get code snippets right here on my website in PixemWeb.com in the PHP tutorial section. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy coding.